There is a bridge in India that grows stronger every year. In 1844, British engineers measured its load capacity at 50 people. Today it holds crowds of 500. No concrete, no steel, no foundation. Just roots trained through bamboo guides, weaving themselves into architecture that repairs its own cracks. We didn't stop building with living trees because the method failed. We stopped because a structure that builds itself threatens a $2.3 trillion construction industry. When your walls grow stronger with time instead of weaker, you don't need replacement materials. You don't need maintenance contracts. And what doesn't need replacing can't generate recurring revenue. This is the story of living architecture. The construction method that outlasted every empire that used it and the industry that spent decades making sure you never learned how it works. The story begins in the Khasi Hills of Meghalaya, India, 500 years ago. Here, local tribes discovered something remarkable. The flexible aerial roots of rubber trees could be guided across rivers. Using bamboo scaffolding, they directed these roots to grow into bridges that took 10 to 15 years to fully form. But once complete, these structures could support over 35 tons and last for centuries, growing stronger with each passing year. What makes these bridges extraordinary isn't just their strength, it's their ability to heal themselves. When damaged by floods or storms, the living roots repair cracks, grow thicker under stress, and adapt to changing conditions. Unlike conventional bridges that begin deteriorating the moment construction ends, these living structures improve with age. This wisdom wasn't limited to India. Medieval German craftsmen mastered Arborsculpture, creating what they called Baumkirche, tree churches grown from oak and beech saplings. These living cathedrals featured walls that photosynthesized their own structural strength and roofs that filtered rainwater through a living canopy. Some of these structures have stood for over 600 years. In China, the ancient art of penjing extended beyond miniature landscapes to full-scale architecture. Entire gardens were shaped from living trees, with pavilions grown from guided bamboo and bridges spanning valleys without cutting a single tree. The universal principle discovered independently by cultures across the world was simple yet profound. Living wood is stronger than dead wood. Guided growth creates perfect structural forms, and perhaps most importantly, time makes the building stronger, not weaker. Fast forward to 1998. German architect Marcel Kalberer stands in a field outside Stuttgart with 400 willow saplings. Trained in conventional construction, Kalberer had grown frustrated with buildings that begin decaying from day one. After studying medieval German Arborsculpture techniques, he developed what he called sanfte Strukturen, gentle structures. The method was elegantly simple. Plant saplings in geometric patterns, bend and weave branches while green and flexible, and bind intersections until natural grafting occurs. The result? Living domes, tunnels, and pavilions that grow stronger each year. Kalberer's first major success was a living cathedral in Auerstedt, Germany. 400 willow trees planted in a circular pattern with branches woven into Gothic arch forms. Within 5 years, the structure could hold 200 people, with its strength increasing approximately 15% annually for the first decade. Most remarkably, these structures repair storm damage within one growing season, require zero maintenance costs after establishment, and actually absorb CO2 during construction, making them carbon negative. The physics behind living architecture seems almost too simple to work, yet it's profoundly effective. Living wood has 40% higher tensile strength than seasoned lumber due to continuous nutrient flow, maintaining cellular integrity. Unlike dead wood, which only weakens over time, living wood adapts and strengthens in response to stress. The natural grafting process is key to these structures. When branches touch under pressure, their cambium layers fuse, vascular systems merge, and the joint becomes stronger than the original individual branches. This process typically takes 2 to 3 growing seasons to complete. The structural advantages are numerous. Roots provide a foundation that deepens as the building ages. Flexible joints absorb earthquake and wind forces. The self-diagnosing system redirects nutrients to stressed areas, creating redundant load paths that prevent catastrophic failure. From an environmental perspective, these buildings breathe and regulate humidity naturally. Leaves provide cooling through transpiration, root systems prevent soil erosion, and the entire structure improves local ecosystem health. So why aren't we all living in homes grown from trees? The answer lies in economics and systems of control. The global construction industry generates $2.3 trillion annually. Every building built to last forever is a building they can't rebuild in 30 years. No memo ever banned living architecture. The system just ran its course. Building codes were written exclusively for dead materials. No category exists for structures that grow. Architects aren't taught biological construction methods. Engineering schools focus on static, not dynamic systems. Regulatory capture ensures living architecture remains marginalized. The International Building Code has no provisions for living structures. Insurance companies exclude experimental or non-standard construction. Banks won't mortgage buildings that don't fit standard appraisal categories. Building officials routinely reject plans for structures they can't classify. The economic incentives are overwhelming. The lumber industry generates $600 billion annually in wood products. The steel industry produces $900 billion in structural materials. The concrete industry accounts for $400 billion in cement and aggregate. Living architecture requires none of these materials. Professional resistance is equally formidable. Contractors can't bid on projects requiring horticultural knowledge. Architects lack training in biological systems. Engineers can't calculate load factors for growing structures using standard methods. Insurance companies won't cover liability for what they deem experimental approaches. Even our cultural programming works against living architecture. We associate permanent buildings with stone and steel, dismissing living structures as primitive or temporary. Media coverage of successful living architecture projects is virtually non-existent, and academic institutions ignore over 1,000 years of documented success. Yet at some point, the numbers speak loudly enough that even systems designed to ignore them must acknowledge reality. Modern testing has confirmed what traditional builders always knew. MIT researchers have verified living wood's superior tensile strength. The University of Stuttgart has documented its self-healing capabilities. Structural load tests exceed conventional building requirements, and seismic testing shows superior earthquake resistance. The performance data is undeniable. Living root bridges in India carry over 35 tons after 500 years. German living cathedrals support full congregations. There are 0 structural failures in documented living architecture, and buildings strengthen 10 to 15% annually for the first 2 decades. International recognition is slowly growing. UNESCO has recognized living root bridges as World Heritage Sites. The European Union funds living architecture research projects. Japan incorporates living bamboo structures in earthquake zones, and New Zealand permits living willow construction in rural areas. The irony is stark. These supposedly experimental living bridges outlast proven concrete spans. Primitive root architecture exceeds modern seismic standards. Temporary living buildings survive while steel structures rust away. Despite institutional resistance, a few builders have refused to let this knowledge die. Marcel Kalbera's Sanfte Strukturen team continues building living pavilions across Europe. The Living Architecture Institute conducts research and education in biological construction. Permaculture communities grow their own shelters, and indigenous groups like the Khasi tribes maintain their traditional bridge-building knowledge. Real examples exist today. The Auerstedt Cathedral is 25 years old and still growing stronger. The Rostock Art Museum features a living willow exhibition space. California eco-villages combine cob and living wood in hybrid structures. Some Indian engineering schools now teach traditional root bridge methods. An underground movement keeps this knowledge alive through online forums sharing grafting techniques, workshops teaching Arborsculpture methods, books documenting traditional practices, and YouTube channels demonstrating living construction projects. Legal pathways do exist, particularly in rural counties with performance-based codes. Agricultural zoning often allows experimental structures. Art installations can bypass building code requirements, and educational demonstrations are permitted on institutional land. The practical application is surprisingly accessible. Picture this exactly as it will happen. You plant 50 willow saplings in a 20-foot circle on your property. In year 1, you establish the saplings and install a temporary bamboo framework. By year 2, you begin bending and weaving flexible branches. In year 3, you bind intersections and remove lower branches. Year 4 sees natural grafting begin as the structure takes shape. By year 5, you remove the bamboo supports and your living dome is complete. The materials and costs are minimal compared to conventional construction. 50 willow saplings cost $200 to $400. A bamboo framework runs $100 to $200. Binding materials add another $50 to $100. That's a total of $350 to $700 compared to $50,000 or more for a conventional structure of similar size. The skill requirements are accessible to most people. A basic understanding of tree growth patterns, patience for a 5-year construction timeline, and seasonal maintenance knowledge. No engineering degree or contractor license needed. Resources are available for those interested. Marcel Kalbera's book, Gentle Structures, workshops from the Living Architecture Institute, permaculture design courses, and knowledge from traditional indigenous practitioners can all guide beginners. Living architecture represents something the construction industry cannot commodify: time. These structures build themselves, requiring no supply chain. They strengthen with age, needing no replacement. They heal themselves, eliminating maintenance contracts. And they improve ecosystem health, reversing environmental damage. This pattern fits the larger suppression of regenerative technologies, methods that work with natural systems rather than against them, solutions that improve with time rather than degrade, techniques that require knowledge rather than capital, and systems that create abundance rather than scarcity. Historically, we've abandoned many such technologies. Romans knew concrete that strengthened underwater. Medieval builders grew cathedrals from living trees. Indigenous peoples shaped entire landscapes to be productive for generations. Yet somehow we traded permanence for planned obsolescence. There is a bridge in India that grows stronger every year. The knowledge was never lost. It was just never sold to you. And now you know why. What shocked you most about living architecture? Comment below. Subscribe now. Every share preserves what they tried to erase.